In the last 24 hours, the United States has quietly put its Doomsday nuclear command planes in the air and moved nuclear-capable warships closer to Iran's coastline. At the same time, key Gulf allies are refusing to let Washington use their bases. China is circling in the background, and global markets are bleeding trillions of dollars in panic. This isn't just another headline. This is the closest the world has come in years to a direct nuclear scare involving Iran, the U.S., Israel, and the entire global economy. Tonight, we're breaking down a terrifying new chapter in this war, why President Donald Trump has authorized the deployment of America's airborne nuclear command centers, the so-called Doomsday Planes, and what that really means for Iran, for the Middle East, and for you. These aircraft only matter in one scenario, when a nuclear confrontation is on the table and the U.S. wants to guarantee it can still launch missiles even if its ground command centers are destroyed. The planes in question are specialized command jets like the E-4B Night Watch and E-6B Mercury, designed to act as flying nuclear headquarters. They carry senior commanders, secure communication systems, and hardened electronics built to survive electromagnetic pulses, cyber attacks, and even the shockwaves of a nuclear blast. If underground bunkers or fixed command posts are knocked out, these aircraft keep the chain of command alive, relaying launch orders to intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear-armed submarines, and strategic bombers. In simple terms, when you see these planes deployed in a crisis region, it means the Pentagon wants a backup nuclear trigger in the sky. Fox News and other U.S. outlets have already reported that Trump's team has revisited strike options against Iranian nuclear facilities, including using stealth bombers and massive bunker-buster bombs. On deeply buried sites like Fordo, the combination of those discussions with the visible presence of the flying Pentagon sends a deliberate message to Tehran. If this escalates, Washington wants Iran to believe that nothing can shut down its nuclear response. For many in the region, that message feels chillingly familiar. During previous crises, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu signaled that Israel could consider nuclear options if it believed Iran was on the verge of a bomb, a threat widely reported and analyzed by major international outlets at the time. Now, with Israel under direct missile fire and the U.S. absorbing repeated blows to its bases and prestige, some fear that the old nuclear shadow over Iran is returning in a more dangerous, less controllable form. But here is the plot twist the YouTube thumbnails don't show you. Even as Washington ramps up nuclear messaging, some of its closest regional partners are pulling back. Qatar's leadership has publicly called for an immediate halt to Iranian attacks and has signaled deep concern over strikes hitting civilian areas and critical infrastructure. At the same time, widely shared statements on social media claim the emir will not allow Qatari territory or airspace to be used for offensive operations against Iran, reflecting how politically toxic this war has become inside the Gulf. Other Gulf states are just as nervous. Kuwait, Bahrain, and the way host major U.S. bases that have already been targeted or threatened by Iranian missiles and drones in this conflict. Each new strike raises the risk that their territory becomes the front line in a war they did not choose and which their populations increasingly see. As a fight between Washington, Tehran, and Tel Aviv, when local leaders publicly distance themselves from U.S. war plans, they're not just making a political statement, they're trying to keep their countries from becoming the next target on Iran's list. Meanwhile, another giant is watching from the side and quietly moving pieces. Reports from major outlets like Bloomberg and Anadolu suggest China is weighing financial support, replacement parts, and missile-related components for Iran, while officially denying any direct arms transfers. Beijing has strong reasons to avoid open confrontation with Washington, but it also buys large quantities of discounted Iranian oil and has an interest in ensuring that Iran doesn't collapse under pressure or lose control of the Strait of Hormuz. That gives China leverage over both Tehran and global energy markets, even if it never fires a shot. For the United States, this is a nightmare mix: nuclear command planes in the air to signal strength, Gulf partners refusing to be launch pads, China probing how far it can support Iran without triggering open sanctions or confrontation. On top of that, European powers that once rushed carriers and warships to show solidarity are now far more cautious. Previous plans to send additional carrier groups into the region have already been scaled back or quietly delayed after seeing how vulnerable U.S. assets have become to missile and drone attacks. Behind all this geopolitics is a brutal economic reality. Every time tensions spike, investors pull money out of riskier markets, stock indices in the U.S. and Europe lurch downward, and billions, sometimes trillions of dollars in market value evaporate in days. The threat of a prolonged crisis around Iran has already pushed oil prices sharply higher and increased costs for shipping and insurance through the Gulf, with knock-on effects on fuel, food, and basic goods worldwide. For ordinary people, it shows up as one more price hike they can't control or predict. So where does this leave the nuclear question? Most experts agree that a deliberate U.S. nuclear strike on Iran remains extremely unlikely. The political, moral, and strategic costs would be almost impossible to contain, but the deployment of airborne command centers is still significant because it normalizes nuclear signaling as part of this conflict. Each side pushes the envelope a little further, hoping to scare the other into backing down. History shows that in such scenarios, the real danger is not a carefully planned first strike, but miscalculation, a radar glitch, a misunderstood message, or a rushed decision in the middle of chaos. For a global audience, the key takeaway is this: the U.S. is putting its highest level nuclear command tools in play. Iran believes time and attrition are on its side and says it can sustain this fight for years. Regional allies and rivals from Qatar to China are trying to protect their own interests without being dragged into a direct showdown that creates a messy, multi-layered crisis where old rules feel weaker and new red lines are tested in real time. If you've watched this far, you're already ahead of the average viewer who only sees the word nuclear and scrolls on. To keep up with how the Doomsday Planes, Gulf politics, China's quiet moves, and market chaos all connect, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. And in the comments, tell us one thing: do you think nuclear threats still work in 2026, or are they just pushing the world closer to a mistake nobody can reverse?